Welcome to Better For Y'all, where a couple of above-average idiots offer lowbrow commentary on highbrow health and wellness issues.
Where do you want to start?
So last Friday, the Dietary Guidelines Committee for 2025 commenced with meeting number 4, I think it was. They've had a few of these. They'll have a few more. They're coming out next year, 2025. We're going to have a whole new food pyramid, maybe it's going to be like a food globe, like a 4D sphere or something.
Ooh.
I don't know what they're cooking up, but
dodecahedron. And it's just all bugs and vegetables.
It's going to have a lot of vegetables on it.
Why do you say that? Well,
one of the committee members. Okay, so there are 22 committee members, 4 dudes. Just 4 dudes.
Okay, so largely feminine influence over the food guidelines?
Yeah.
Interesting.
And 4 dudes are, they might be soy boys.
Betas. I'm missing my stream deck. It's okay. It's better if we don't.
One of them is Christopher Gardner. He was the lead author on the Stanford twin study paper that we talked about a couple weeks ago. So I think it's safe to say that we're going to see a lot of helpings of, cruciferous green vegetables, count on some corn, some soy, some wheat.
Ooh, staples.
Yeah, definitely.
Cash
Everybody's diet we need way more corn, soy, and wheat for sure.
That is true.
Lots of fruit. Fruit's good. It's got some fiber and some sweetness. I don't eat a lot of fruit myself.
Vitamins and minerals.
Do you eat a lot of fruit?
I've gone through phases. Earlier in 2023, when I was more heavily carnivore, I was doing like the predominantly meat and raw dairy thing, and I had a fairly significant amount of fruit with that as well. Apples, mostly, some blueberries. I do like bananas in the morning. I was really into mango there for a little while. That's a very, very sweet fruit. I mean, you can feel that one hit you in the dopamine receptors, man.
Dude,
that one fires off.
Go so overboard on mangoes when given the opportunity.
They are crack. They are the fruit equivalent of crack for sure. So yes, but right now I'm sort of in maybe like a fruit lull phase. Like I'll again do blueberries. I think that the antioxidants are good and I like the flavor. And occasionally I'll do those and you're gonna love this, those little squeezer packs.
Oh, like for little kids?
Well, they're not just for little kids, okay? Don't do me like that. Actually, I first Anthony brought them on the Smith River trip, and they were great for just a little shot of glucose. If you're like mid meal, you couldn't really stop and unpack the cooler and eat something. They were just ready to go. They're shelf stable. And then I brought them to elk camp in the fall, and it was a great little boost of sugar when you just needed a little pick me up or a few calories to get a little further down the trail. And they've got other things in them, like, whatever, chia seeds or flax or something like that, something for a little bit of substance. But
so little squeezers,
man. Yeah, pretty good. But other than that, right now, not a ton of fruit in my diet.
I don't fuck with a ton either. I mean, I have been making these. I'll take ground beef and mix that with some huckleberries.
Ooh.
Because we get those around here.
Mm-hmm,
and I try to only eat it. I try to keep it, to around this time of the year when I'm crushing huckleberries.
Sure.
Getting ready for the long winter ahead.
Well, I think it's a little late for that. We're kind of in it, aren't we?
Fuck, dude. It's getting to be kind of, I don't know. We've got these short days here and it feels like winter is just coming. Doesn't it?
Well, it feels like winter just came.
Yeah, all over this
and because it was polar vortex
Mm-hmm.
season, which came early this year. Normally it's in February. This was in January, but it's supposed to be 50 degrees next week. So I think it's going to feel pretty balmy springtime.
Amen, brother.
Here pretty quick.
So I get the ground beef, mix it with some hucks, and I put those in the food dehydrator.
Dry them out.
Yeah, it's got like a pemmican.
Okay, sure.
I haven't quite dialed that recipe yet, so I haven't shared them with you yet because they're they're definitely I enjoy them sort of, but not enough to, to give them out yet.
I'm proud of this because I made it, but it's like something my mom would probably be like, "Oh, that's nice, dear."
Exactly.
And then just put it in the closet.
Yeah. So anyway, back to the task at hand here. We've got a new food guidelines coming out. So we'll keep a close eye on that over the year and keep everybody abreast of what the powers that be think that we need to get fed.
Question. Do you think that bugs will make their debut on this food guideline?
Oh man, I sure hope so, because that is just going to provide endless fodder for those of us who think that's stupid as fuck.
They've been making appearances in food with different names.
Ooh.
I heard from a friend of mine who has a shellfish allergy that he has to be particularly careful now because they've rebranded cricket protein as something different, and there's something about crickets that's very similar. The protein is very similar to shellfish, and they can cause allergic reactions for people with that kind of situation. So something for other people to look into and maybe be careful about.
I want, like, why do we need to eat bugs? Are we worried about, are we worried that we don't have enough food to feed everybody?
Well, I don't think it's that. I mean, I certainly think that we have more than enough food to feed everybody.
Dude, we waste so much fucking food.
Oh, I know. Oh, absolutely. But even beyond the waste, like there's still enough food to feed everyone. I mean, and regardless of how you want to look at like the processes through which we've gotten to that point, right? Like synthetic fertilizers and pesticides and things, like we have just by volume, absolutely, almost exponentially increase the amount of food we're able to produce on the planet, which is a good thing for feeding more people. I think the bug thing comes in where it's like they use dramatically less water and other resources to create an equivalent amount of protein. Now, whether or not that is nutritionally equivalent, I don't know. I'm not a dietitian or, an expert in that. But I mean, that was the argument I always heard, was they use vastly less water than it takes to raise cattle, for example. But again, that could be propaganda. I don't know. And I think that there are a couple of good books out there on the subject right now. I know you read that one that you pointed me towards, Defending Beef. Was there anything in there about that? I
feel like Defending Beef might have been kind of like pre-bug
culture.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Pre Davos pushing that.
Which we're talking 10 years. I feel like there was a kind of a peak, like right around 8-10 years ago or something when bugs were really coming on the scene.
Mm-hmm.
And then they were available commercially, like I was like, you could actually, there was the cricket cookies.
Yeah. We had Cowboy Cricket Farms down the road in Belgrade, Montana here, just a few miles out of Bozeman. And we would stock these cookies that they ground the crickets into flour and put them in the batter. They were good. I mean, like, I didn't hate it.
Yeah, it was a fucking chocolate chip cookie.
And that is my favorite dessert. So I'm going to say they obscured it in just the right thing to get me to buy in. But I'll never forget that time we were working on our kosher certification, and we had the rabbi come by, and we told him about the cricket cookies, and he's like, "You what? You serve what?" It's like, never mind. Let's just not talk.
No offense. I hope nobody's offended by this, but kosher certification is a fucking racket.
It's very expensive, and if that is something that you need for your diet and your religious preferences, power to you.
Totally. I'm not knocking the preferences. I'm knocking the system that certifies it.
It is not cheap.
Well, even beyond it wasn't even like that cost prohibitive, but it was very clear that dude gets to set whatever kind of price that he wants.
He's like an independent certifier within the greater regulatory framework of what kosher means.
Yeah. And hey, I appreciate the fact that he was cutting us a deal.
That's true.
But it still kind of illuminated the system a little bit, where I'm like, oh, so it's not like a ward. What do the Jewish folks call their like little cluster of synagogues? And
I don't know. I'm not,
like, what's the Bozeman like local rabbi, like, what does he oversee? Do you know?
It's the I don't know. I was trying to make
nice
a union
dude.
joke, but I just didn't have it.
Really nice
great
dude.
guy. Yeah, for sure.
But the certification process is
well, it's interesting because you can certify the plant, like the facility that the product comes out of, and you can certify the product.
Mm-hmm.
We were safe from the Cricket cookie thing because they were prepackaged and they weren't made there.
Totally.
Right. So like it had nothing to do with our product and it had nothing to do with our facility, but had it would have been a huge deal breaker. So I just find it interesting. Like there's a whole subset of people who observe kosher dietary restrictions that would not consider eating crickets, but find it like abhorrent, you know, and other bugs as well. So interesting. I don't know if I'm going to be excited to see if there's bugs in the new dietary guidelines.
Fingers crossed on that one.
We'll have to look. We'll
Do they
report
put
back
bugs
next week.
in bug juice?
What is bug juice?
It's like those little cute little multicolored squeezy bottles of juice that are like on the very bottom row at the at town pump. So like, have you noticed like the most colorful, smallest bottles are always like at like adults knee level
at child height? Why would they ever do such a thing?
Isn't that weird?
Yeah, same with sugar cereal and anything else that's fun.
Dude, I saw there's a fucking Sour Patch Kids canned beverage now. Yeah.
That's terrifying.
Yeah, that's out there. It's there for
how many grams of sugar per serving?
All of them.
200?
No, every last one of the grams.
Serving's like
Just
2 ounces.
For our sweet little angels out there.
Oh boy, we just love them
to keep
so
them nice and
much.
pacified.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, does it even do that really is the question. You know, I mean, there's always the trope about like sugar high. I mean, I suppose now in my life, I find more fatigue coming from overconsumption of sugar than anything.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't touch the stuff.
Griff is a paragon of virtue, and you would all do well to observe how stringently he follows his diet.
Some days, yeah. Yeah, follow me. It'll do you real well.
Yeah.
So that happened, which is a thing. The other really cool thing, have you heard of this guy, Nick Norwitz?
I have not.
Dude, Nick Norwitz, bad motherfucker. Young dude, 26, 27. He has his PhD from Oxford.
Okay.
Elite establishment.
Yeah. Little community college over across the pond.
Overseas, right? Yeah. JUCO. Great football team.
I don't get the reference, but it's okay.
Yeah, I don't either. Anyway, he's got a PhD in biochem or molecular biology or something really sharp. Now he's a third year MD student at Harvard. And he's been doing a lot of work on the lipid energy model and these lean mass hyper responder phenotypes that tend to bubble up out of the ketogenic world.
Interesting.
So when what they're seeing is folks on a ketogenic diet, carbohydrate restricted, when you are depleted of your glycogen stores, there's this hypothesis that these circulating fatty acids wind up generating LDL. So people with a low BMI, like 24 below, tend to, when on a carbohydrate restricted diet, their LDL tends to increase. And we see the opposite with people with a very high BMI.
And just so everyone is aware, LDL is the cholesterol that you don't want or that you do.
So this is where things get a little fun.
Se.
Yeah, they say that LDL is the bad cholesterol. Mm-hmm. LDL is the one that is prone to oxidation and causing likely to cause arterial plaques.
Okay.
So LDL is the one that we have over time established a link with ASCVD, atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease, and high LDL levels. So that's the current dogma. What the work that Nick and his colleagues are doing is essentially opening up that idea to further investigation, that maybe it's not just high LDL in isolation. It's perhaps all these other metabolic biomarkers that are also likely responsible for that disease. So we've kind of villainized LDL. Now HDL the high density lipoprotein. So what these things do is, fat is water insoluble, right? So in order for it to be carted around in the bloodstream, it needs a protein attached to it. Okay, and so that's what these lipoproteins, these LDLs, HDLs. Now HDL is looked at as like an antioxidant, and does not cause. I think, in fact, can break down that arterial plaque. I might be wrong on that, but. So, historically people are like high LDL bad, low HDL bad. But what we were seeing with these lean mass hyper-responders is you're seeing this lipid triad where we have high LDL, or LDL like greater than or equal to 200, HDL greater than or equal to 80, and triglycerides lower than or equal to 70, I think. I believe these are all like milligrams per deciliter, I think.
Sure.
I'm not sure what the unit is, but you can find it out.
Mm-hmm.
All those three things in isolation are rare. Like it's kind of rare to see any one of those things.
Particularly that high.
Well, so like a high LDL, a high HDL, low triglycerides,
I see.
Like seeing all of those things is fairly rare in the population, or any one of those things in the population. Mm-hmm. Seeing that triad is perhaps evidence of, some new, not necessarily a condition, but maybe it's, again, this is all open to further investigation, and there's nobody's planted any flags on anything here yet, but it might appear as if that triad could offer potentially maybe there's some sort of protective element there. Maybe there is some sort of other, energy model at play with these. But I think what it's doing is it's opening up people's eyes that perhaps we can start. Clinicians are so geared towards evidence-based medicine. You've heard evidence-based medicine just like jam down our throat over the last couple of years, and for good reason. I mean,
evidence is good.
Yeah.
If you're going to make a, claim.
But if I'm a clinician, which I'm not, but if I were, I would want to look at more than just the systematic reviews, more than just those meta-analyses. What's wrong with an anecdote? What's wrong with if you have, let's say you have a patient who, who's obese, who's tried a lot of different things and nothing has responded. What's wrong with trying, say a ketogenic diet for, the purposes of potentially improving some of these poor biomarkers, whether or not it's, A1C or, fasting glucose, or even like some mental health problems, which is they're absolutely beginning to show there's some benefits for mental health from a ketogenic diet standpoint. So,
interesting.
I mean, if I would want my doctor, if I knew nothing, if I had, if I was completely reliant on centralized health, like I would hope that my physician has, has the reasoning, the deductive ability to wade through all of the evidence and, maybe use a really, maybe get a little more insightful and dig a little deeper into my health, and maybe throw me an option that has worked for a lot of people, because what we're, for all of its negative impacts on society, with social media, access to information and anecdotes from, millions of other people who are doing something similar is readily available to everybody now. We can see people are being very open, this kind of like decentralized health thing where people are being open about their biomarkers. They're being really open about how they're getting to these phenotypes. We're very open about our diets, our lifestyles. We can see these changes. Why not in certain patients? Like, why not rely on an anecdote?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, and I think that especially for someone in that situation where it's like you've tried a lot of things and you haven't had a lot of success. Well, you've got even less reason to avoid trying unconventional things. But I want to step back just to make sure I'm clear. You're saying that, this triad of high LDL and HDL in tandem with low triglycerides in a visibly fit and metabolically healthy person is what is known as now under this new emerging paradigm. What is it again?
A lean mass hyper responder.
Lean mass hyper responder. Okay. And
it's important to note on that too, like those numbers, maybe like, okay, so if you're, 6.5 A1C or above is diabetic, like what is 6.3? So they've got these cutoff points for this lean mass hyper responder. There's probably a little bit of tolerance, so like, we're just starting to understand like what this phenotype is.
Yeah.
But it's clearly emerging in a lot of people who go on a carbohydrate restricted diet.
It's interesting because I think there's already been some chinks in the armor showing up around the narratives surrounding cholesterol, right? Like I think Dr. Asim Malhotra has done a lot to break that open when he appeared on Joe Rogan's show and talked about his experience in working in a hospital in England as a very credentialed doctor, and I highly recommend people go listen to that episode. He was pretty much blacklisted or kicked out of the hospital that he was working with in his role, basically removed from any ability, especially to matriculate through the ranks of the hospital, because he was doing research and suggesting that statins weren't necessary to combat high cholesterol, because high cholesterol by itself wasn't necessarily an indicator of cardiovascular disease. But the statin lobby, the pharma lobby around statins, which are one of the most prescribed pharmaceutical drugs in the world, was so strong that they basically went to the hospital administration and said, like, you need to get this guy out of here. This is not working for us. And they did, because medicine is very captured by pharma. And so I wonder about like how this additional research will come out, what will be concealed or pushed back on, and how that'll kind of shake out with the powers that be.
Well, my friend, I'm glad you asked because so Dr. Norwitz just released a paper, and this was okay. So it was the studies. The sample size was an N of 1. It was just himself. He did this experiment on himself. Now, one could argue that he's the perfect subject for something like for some sort of dietary intervention exploration, because of how disciplined he is, how fastidious he is with data collection, record keeping, understanding the study design, understanding the analytics behind everything, has a very, very deep insight into that lipid energy model, has a very keen understanding of metabolic health and how to design a study that's going to have some robust results. So what he did, and I don't want to like butcher the methods too much, so I'll kind of like get to the gist of it. He went on he basically was comparing the LDL decrease from a treatment of, so for I think it was 12 days, 12 Oreos a day, 100 grams of carbohydrates for like 3 weeks versus a typical statin treatment. And he did this on himself. He had washout periods in between. It was very detailed.
Question?
Yeah.
Just 12 Oreos a day, that's it?
No, in addition to his normal food and in addition to exogenous ketones. So he was making sure that he was maintaining ketosis. So carbohydrate, otherwise a carbohydrate restricted diet. He was basically looking to see if there was going to be a difference in LDL, and what he found was that, again, sample size of 1, very well controlled study, but in his experiment, his LDL decreased further with the Oreo treatment than with the statin treatment.
What?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
So what do statins?
I mean, again, we've been made aware that in many cases statins aren't effective, and in many cases people have, negative externalities associated with taking them that oftentimes are not really fully described when prescribed.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think even with some of the more natural ones, like for example, in my family's experience with like, what is it, red yeast rice or something like that. I don't know. I can't remember. But that sort of natural application of it, not necessarily a pharmaceutical. Body aches, joint pain, like really just discomfort, just existing. So like if that's the trade-off, if it's like, well, you can risk a slightly higher cholesterol, which may or may not be a contributing factor to heart disease, and be metabolically healthy, or you can try to reduce it by a little bit with this intervention that makes your life suck. Like, what would you rather do?
Yeah. Well, and maybe I'm wrong too. I think you might be a little more hip on that, on what Malhotra has put out into the world, but like, there's not a big difference in all-cause mortality from people who are prescribed statins. Is that correct?
I don't know.
Okay.
I'd have to look into that.
I want to say that that's the case. That's kind of one of the big points of arguments against them. It's like
that statins don't dramatically reduce all-cause mortality. Yeah. I don't know.
Maybe I'm wrong. I might be wrong there. Maybe I'm talking out of my ass, and I should just keep details like that to myself. But I think
I think it's a question. It's a good question to be answered. So something we should definitely make a note of and look up and circle back on. But fascinating though.
Totally. I mean, it gives it all. Again, this all of scientific inquiry is all about us asking more questions. We're not always going to, so many papers end with, the results of this research warrant further investigation. That's
good. That's good.
Like
that's great. No. Actually, the results of this paper suggest conclusively that if you eat 12 Oreos a day, your cholesterol will go down.
Yeah. As long as you're, very fastidious about your diet and understand exactly how many grams of carbs and
take exogenous ketones.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a lot of things, but he controlled for a lot of stuff here.
So, but my question though is, so the exogenous ketones are a variable as well, right? Because he wasn't existing under that paradigm in his normal diet prior to starting this experiment. Did he control for that too?
I think he said his normal diet is something like 80% fat, 18% protein, and 2% carbs. So likely like always in ketosis.
So he was introducing those to try to maintain the same ratio of macronutrients.
Yes.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Interesting. Well, I'll be very curious to know.
No, he introduced those. He introduced Oreos because they are, no one is confusing Oreos as being a healthy snack, and long-term consumption of Oreos is likely to lead to a problem. If you eat 12 Oreos every single day, without, I don't know,
dude, they're vegan. Of course they're healthy. Oreos are vegan. Of course they're good for you. Stumped.
Yeah. You got me there. Okay,
so he introduced the Oreos because it's like very obviously like not a health food. Yeah. Should not improve biomarkers that would suggest better health.
Nailed. Yeah,
and they
exactly.
did.
And they did.
So really, it just like puts egg on the face of the idea of taking statins as an intervention to reduce cholesterol.
Or it just warrants further inquiry.
Nah, I suppose it does that too.
Maybe what this does is it adds to the body of work that allows the next researcher to have a more robust proposal to continue studying these effects. To continue looking at how can we develop, these therapeutic diets. How can we look at food as medicine, which is just this classic thought process that all going all the way back to Hippocrates.
Hippocrates. God, what are we? Fucking Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. Socrates. Keanu's best work, by the way.
Like the food. Yes. Like, okay, I will concede that there's a lot of joy derived from sharing meals with your friends and family. There's the food can, derive some hedonistic sort of, outcomes for people. It can be fun and filled with joy, but really, like I would prefer, like, food is it's data, it's fuel. It's meant to just like help us, be like, keep on going. It's meant to help, like, really, I mean, I guess it used to be just meant to give us the fuel to like go find some more fuel.
Well, yeah, I mean, to the point then where you actually had the energy to like find a mate and court them and reproduce, right?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
I suppose if you want to boil it all the way down to like the most basic biological imperative, that would be it, right? Just survive long enough to create more of you.
Right.
But I think there's a lot to be said for the effect of the mental aspects of food. Like you mentioned, it's positively stimulating to dine with people that you enjoy. The mentality you have around your food, I think, is really important because, cortisol is linked to a lot of, I would say an overproduction, overabundance of cortisol in your everyday life is linked to all sorts of maladies, right? Cortisol being the stress hormone. You do need it to survive, but too much of it is a bad thing. And so, like, also having latent guilt around the things that you eat and having stress about all the things that you eat can cause problems as well.
Yeah, fuck that.
It's like if you're gonna beat yourself up over eating something, like you should work on that first, really. I mean, so long as you're like metabolically healthy and you're not immediately in danger of like having a heart attack or something like that, like I try to be cognizant of like the way I feel about the things that I eat. And when I have a pastry from the bakery across the street or whatever, I don't beat myself up about it. I enjoy it. I let it bring the joy that I want it to have. And then I also think about, okay, how can I do something that I know is physiologically good for me?
Dude, I have seen you in that bathroom lashing yourself in the mirror, just lambasting your poor little fucking, just incapable of handling, every whim that comes across because you were fucking downing a damn cannoli. I've seen you in there. Don't lie.
Cannolis aren't my favorite, but I've been known to punish myself once or twice. But
here's a question: do you think that the joy we derive at like Thanksgiving or whatever, or like a gathering where we're breaking bread, like, do we get that from being with our people, or do we get that from the food?
I suppose it depends, but I get it from being with people. Mm-hmm. But the food is delicious, and I think the process of making it together is also awesome. Like this last year, we had a hilarious time taking the turkey out of the oven, and it was so tender. It was just perfect, but we like couldn't flip the turkey because we had cooked it upside down, and we tried flipping it and it just like starts falling apart like limb from limb. And my brother and my mom and I are just crying, laughing because it's just like disintegrated and it was tender and amazing and awesome.
So
but
you're 36, 35?
34 next week.
Yeah. So 34 years of living and you and your family have been cooking the turkey upside down all this fucking time?
No, my mom is very self-conscious about her cooking. She always thinks the turkey turns out dry. Even if it's amazing, she's like, it's dry. I'm like, Mom, it's fine. It's good.
She's like trying a new technique?
So we were trying a new technique.
Cool.
Yeah.
And it worked.
It did work.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, if you learn nothing else today, you learn that if I can turn that turkey over if you want the moist breasts around.
That's right. Yes.
So...
But it is about the experience. It's about the experience. The food is secondary, but it is a part of the experience.
Which you can, I guess, some people probably might get a cortisol release from gathering with their family or friends, or just avoid it altogether.
Yeah. And
order up DoorDash for Thanksgiving.
And that's great. Like really, whatever you're into. I mean, whatever you're into. Are you at all concerned about how
insular we've become, and how easy it is to access everything from the palm of our hand, from the safety of our bedroom.
Yes.
Does that make you, maybe like, how do you feel about that?
It doesn't give me the best feeling for the health of our society, I would say. It has allowed, I think, a lot of influences to come over us that increase that isolation or that increase polarity, right? We're all consuming content from that's selected by an algorithm that's trying to design something that will keep us engaged on that platform as long as possible. And more likely than not, that's not like the happy-go-lucky, like dog befriends a goat and they're best friends content. It's like, it's the fear porn, and it's the over-sexualized stuff, and it's the things that make you angry and upset at the others, whoever those are. And so, I mean, like, not to just go down a social media rabbit hole, but yeah, I mean, I think technology certainly has the ability to make our lives better, and that it can make things more convenient, more efficient, more fun and engaging. But I do certainly think that we have a problem as a society, probably just overall as a species now, of over consuming those things. And like with anything, with food or anything else, like too much of a good thing isn't a good thing. So I think it's a concerning thing. Where are you on it?
Well, I look at, when it comes to what's coming across left and right and what's becoming normalized or whatever, one of the big things that stands out, I mean, how many ads for fucking Betterhelp do I need to come across?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If there's any indication that we have a problem, it's like your feed being filled with like, hey, here's some therapy for you.
And it's not even just the feed or whatever, because like thankfully I've been de-levering myself from the feed, as it were, just the doom scroll or whatever. Mm-hmm. But I've still got whoever in my ears, like anytime I'm in the car or on the at the gym or whatever. And I mean, it's untold amounts of people who have share of mind are selling you BetterHelp, mm-hmm. Are selling you Talkspace, or selling you fucking Headbook or Headgear, Calm app, or like yeah. and these things, there obviously is a need to treat mental illness, and by no means am I attempting to de-emphasize people's struggles in this realm. Mm-hmm. Like we all go through them, some more so than others, some more, some with more severity, some with, a easier path to a clinical diagnosis. We all go through problems in our day to day that it seems like now every single issue that a human can face can now be diagnosed, prescribed, treated in some way. So, I'm all about, releasing, the shame associated with like seeking help, or the shame, associated with being different or depressed or anxious or whatever. Like I'm all about destigmatizing that. But I think what's happening, and I'm pretty confident that what has happened, is that we've gone way too far in the other direction. Like we've now normalized being mentally ill. We now find ourselves in a situation where it's almost as if sometimes like having having anxiety, or being afflicted with some sort of struggle is almost like you get like social credit for it.
Well, I certainly think that's the case. Yeah. I mean, you see, the attraction to marginalized groups for people, which I think part of which is perfectly human. Of course, if you feel like you're a misfit and there's a community out there for you, you're going to seek it out and you're going to find it. So I think part of it is just human nature, probably. But certainly, I think that if one naturally in isolation, if you will, which is sort of hard because nobody exists in isolation. But if one is healthy overall, and you see that you can gain social currency, status, whatever it might be, within a certain group by identifying as having a certain aberration in your personality or your mental state or whatever it is, there's an attraction to do that potentially as an incentive, getting more involved into a group that you want to have status within.
I almost think that it's not even, that it might be subconscious, that it's not as nefarious as somebody sitting in their bedroom and saying, I'm going to game the system here and exploit, now, not to say that I'm sure this does happen, but I'm going to go ahead and default to having more compassion for humans here and say that like we're probably subconsciously being fed a constant stream of models with Instagram face or whatever with like puffy lip, basically this like cyborg looking female. We're shown these sort of really difficult to attain standards of beauty that aren't even like classically beautiful, that have just become this like mold. We're being fed this stuff left and right, or we see, people, we read in the comments or whatever, people are affirming other folks for, being vulnerable, and somehow that seeps into our subconscious and is displayed through, while that's happening, we're then being told that, we're kind of being propagandized that it's not only like that, not only is it not shameful to seek out therapy, but that everybody should be going to therapy.
It's glorified.
And in fact, here's a coupon code for it.
That's weird. You're right. That's a little odd.
Yeah.
Because
why do coupons exist? It's a promotional tool.
Interesting.
Right.
Yeah.
Like if something is so valuable that we can't live without it, then whatever the price is, we should be willing to pay it. Not, because not because it's healed girl summer and we get a fucking.
I mean, here's an interesting contrast to that perspective. So I've done like talk therapy, right?
In person.
Yep, in person, both as a couple and singularly. Don't know if that speaks to the quality of the therapy. We were together with this therapist, and then we weren't together, and I kept going. But no, I don't mean any ill will towards my counselor. He's great. Although I do think we spend most of our time just kind of arguing about politics than rather actually like digging into things.
But you can do that with any other asshole.
I could, and I wouldn't have been there as long had it not been covered under Medicaid, which I was on at the time, which was instrumental in me actually going, because had I had to pay, whatever it was, like $90, $100 plus an hour to do it, I wouldn't have done it. So, and not all insurance covers it. In fact, the insurance that I have now does not cover mental health services. So to contrast to your coupon code thing, it's not made readily available through all insurance coverage. So it's not universally seen, interestingly enough, by, some private insurance underwriters who are very good at understanding statistics and effectiveness and other things, and may have their own set of incentives and things that they're trying to, calculate for and optimize for within their own revenue model. It's not universally seen as like this panacea of something that's going to help. But I mean, what's your experience? Have you tried any of the like digital online therapy stuff?
Yeah. I did BetterHelp, couples therapy, prior to my divorce.
Oh. Wow, we are 2 for 2. So you did BetterHelp as a couple.
Yeah,
and
totally.
Was that you were together like in front of a computer?
We were not a great experience at all. It was the gentleman, older gentleman. He was based in Montana, but still we're remote. This would have been in.
What was his name?
I don't recall.
We'll bleep it out.
I didn't. The experience. I try to. Maybe I wasn't like necessarily traumatized as much as my former partner was by the experience, but just as a rational male who does assign some dollar value to the services rendered and whatnot. Like I felt that we got ripped off pretty badly.
So you felt you got ripped off, but your former spouse,
she was the trauma for her has like lingered.
Wow.
It was because you go to a situation like that, you go seeking help at, potentially for some people, like some of the lowest points in your life or when you're looking for stuff like that.
Yeah.
When you are most susceptible to injury or when you're like, most, potentially open to influence, like that's often when we go to these people, it might be maybe it's becoming more of the norm now, but like, therapy could be this preventive measure that you're using to gather the tools that you need to go through life. It could be because you want to off yourself. It could be because you've got substance abuse issues. And I don't mean to like, maybe like saying off yourself is a little harsh, but real talk. This is what we go through. I've been through it. Like when we're at our lowest, we sometimes we really need that support. When you're on the verge of, the end of a marriage, it's a big deal.
Absolutely. I mean,
it sucks.
One of the most traumatic experiences a person can go through,
Totally,
I think, if you,
totally.
no matter what, really.
And so
did you find, can I ask, did you find that support that you were looking for in that moment, did you get it from that experience?
No, we got the guy was very narcissistic. The guy was more concerned about relaying he was talked more about his life.
Really?
Yeah, totally. So I think that opens up, if you, it opens up the possibility that there are more people like that out there. And if you can do your own Google search and look on Reddit and look across any channel where people are discussing mental health, and even look on like Betterhelp, social pages and whatnot. Like even looking across these things, you will see both experiences, positive and negative. You'll see a lot of negative backlash about some of these offerings. For sure.
I mean, I could see that. I mean, there's so many directions to take it.
Well, here's something like when you, so the reason we wound up at BetterHelp was because it was really difficult to get on anybody's books,
because there's an absolute shortage of mental health professionals with availability.
Why is that? Is that because every single one of us are being told that we need to go to therapy all the time, so everybody is going to therapy? Is it because, the digital environment has led to, some form of dementia? Is it, like, are there these forces out there that are actually, artificially inflating the demand, or is the supply just low?
Well, I think that's a really great question, and I don't have any data to know that one way or another. I'd be very curious to investigate that, actually. I mean, there is a thesis that we as humans are not evolutionarily prepared to deal with the rate at which technology has accelerated and the rate of change that has produced in our daily lives. And we were talking about this the other day. You see a resurgence of interest in homesteading, people returning to the ways of old, or, getting back in touch with, some ancestral form of living. And I think that's all a natural response and a reaction to how quickly things are becoming digitized and how much of our lives are lived on our phones and on the internet, and how much of our socialization takes place there. And I find it interesting that, what we are now seeking in the form of a Zoom therapist, such as Betterhelp, we would have previously confided in friends and family in person. And that's the irony there, and the context within, our insular digital social lives is certainly not lost to me.
No, I mean, yeah, you're spot on. Like part of why, if you're engaging or you're seeking out therapy, mental, therapy from a psychiatrist, psychologist, or whatever, to give you the tools to be a more resilient human, but you're doing it, on your phone, via text, with a chat bot, by yourself in your room. Cause there's like AI therapies now too, like that exists.
I was going to say, how would you even know? Yeah. And soon enough, how would you even know if your BetterHelp counselor was actually a person or not?
Yeah. So if you're going to develop tools to become a resilient human, but you're doing it by avoiding resiliency, avoiding the awkwardness of being in public, going out and meeting a stranger, what are we accomplishing? I mean, and again, I have like zero doubt that there is a subset of the population that will benefit from that.
I mean, yeah, I think people in very acute situations who need an intervention in the moment, like those resources are there for them, and hopefully they're taken advantage of.
Yeah. I mean, we don't know how effective they are, and arguably the people who are most in need of acute treatment would really benefit from the human touch.
Yeah.
Hug
therapy, man. Mm-hmm. It's a real thing.
And it's something that I think you and I have been working on by just doing this, getting together on Saturdays or whatever, like making that time to reconnect with your friends and family, and not thinking that you're like a drain on their emotional labor or whatever,
yeah,
like that. Like, I think that's there's this other strange facet of humanity, is that we've come to like respect everybody's time so much, that we no longer, that it's easier for us to give people the space because we assume they don't have the bandwidth to deal with our shit.
They're too busy, or they've got their own life to deal with. They don't need to be worrying about me. I totally get that. There's an interesting flip side to that though. And maybe you can help me fill in the gaps here, because I'm riffing off of memory, but is it not true that when you ask someone to do you a favor and they say yes, they get more cognitive or emotional benefit from providing you help than you get from them giving you the help, right? Like they feel indebted to you, or in some way bonded to you by the opportunity of giving that help.
Yeah,
right?
I mean,
am I reversing that? I'm trying to remember the exact context of this, but it was really interesting to me.
I mean, that's how, it's like why things catch on, for we tell people about things, or, share things with others for the, potential social currency we can gain from turning somebody on to something.
But even beyond that, just like the intrinsic value of like the feel good factor of like, I was able to help that person. Like that is something that an emotion that people derive. And I can't say universally, maybe some people are annoyed by it or whatever, but generally speaking, that is an emotion that people feel when they're able to help someone else. And so to be the person who is in need of help, to ask for that is actually not to to bother someone, but it's actually to offer them an opportunity to feel better about themselves for engaging and supporting and helping. The harder part maybe is the ego part of the person asking for the help, humbling themselves enough to say, hey, I need a hand here. Can you help me out with this? Right.
Well, truly the, most, if there were no hangups to be had, we don't help people because it helps us, right? I mean, or do we do it for altruism, or do we do it because it makes us feel good?
I think there is 100% a degree of self-interest in almost every situation where someone does something good for someone else. Obviously, there's an element of altruism as well. You want to do good for others because you want the world to be a better place. But if the world's a better place, it's also better for you. You want them to feel better because if they feel better and they're around you and their spirit is higher, it lifts you up as well. I mean, I don't think you can get past the fact that almost everything humans do in the world is at least in some way self-interested. And I don't think that's a bad thing at all, because self-interest is what drives us to pick up the trash when we see it on the street, because we want to live in a clean environment. It's why we wave when someone lets us in traffic. It's because, well, they did a nice thing for us. They let me go, and I want them to know that I recognize that I appreciate that, and it creates a social bond. And that feels good. There's so many things that we do that are self-interested, and I think that's actually positive. And the fact that it's been demonized, to me, the selfishness or greed can certainly be blown out of proportion. It can certainly be overdone to the point where it's no longer healthily in balance or beneficial to all parties. But generally speaking, I think most people don't operate in that space.
Right. You're probably right. I mean, let's kind of look at this therapy thing from a macroeconomic level.
Okay.
I mean, because this is this, I would consider this kind of it's in your wheelhouse,
Oh, maybe.
Sort of.
I'm not an economist, nor am I a doctor, nor am I a psychiatrist, psychologist.
Do you see any problems with something like medicine being so centralized and so if anything were to value from losing that financial incentive of capitalism, might medicine for the good of humanity be something that an argument could be made to support moving away from such a from the current system that we have?
So if I'm hearing you correctly, what I'm hearing you say is, what I'm hearing you ask is, would medicine benefit from not being a capitalist endeavor?
Yeah.
No, I don't think so. Because I think that, well, the system we find ourselves in now is not a free market, right? I mean, as much as people condemn capitalism and free market capitalism as, the root of all evil, money's the root of all evil, it's wrong. The love of money is the root of all evil is actually the statement, the full quote. And I think that bears a lot more reality. But really, at the core of it, what it is, what capitalism is, what the free market does is it allows all consumers and producers to define the value of a product that is represented in a price, right, for that product. And that's a neutral mechanism, neither good nor bad. It's just really, it just establishes, a means by which people can exchange value at a point where a buyer was willing to buy and a seller is willing to sell. Now, I think that there are distortions that occur in the market, particularly when we find ourselves in a place where large pharmaceutical corporations, in this example, have the ability to spend billions of dollars lobbying politicians to pass bills that favor them or relax regulations, or someone who works as a regulator in the FDA, for example, is in some maybe backdoor meeting offered a job at the pharmaceutical company as a consultant once they leave there. So there's the incentive. They know that their career path leaves regulatory to go into pharma. So they are kind in their regulation of those pharma companies because they want a cushy job. I mean, it's referred to as regulatory capture. It happens across many, many industries, and it's certainly happening in the pharmaceutical industry. And I think that's where things get pretty sticky, because when the government is given enough power to pull the purse strings, to print money, to whatever, like when they have the resources to allocate and dictate who succeeds, who gets the money, who doesn't, or who gets regulated more strictly and who doesn't, then they have the opportunity to pick winners and losers, and that's not a free market, and that results in abuses, in corruption, right there. Then it's within the pharmaceutical company's best interest to give money to the politician, or work with the regulator in some way to like funnel money to whomever they're funneling money to create an environment where they can succeed at others' expense, and that's where things go awry. But I don't think that you can even remove money from the situation, because it's really just a means of exchange. It's really just a way of allocating value. And this is me being a layman, non-economist, anything like that. But I just don't see how an argument can be made that it's even possible to remove that. Because what does the situation look like in that case, right? What would that look like if we were to be able to remove money from medicine?
Well, we obviously aren't too interested in what's going on with our neighbors to the north. I mean, we would certainly use some of the problems of socialist medical system to. I mean, we have examples of these things to display how difficult it can be to access treatment. It's still difficult to access treatment in the case that we're talking about here. Right. We haven't necessarily solved the issue through capitalism. And I'm going to specifically keep this focused on mental health treatment.
Oh, sure.
For this.
Okay. Yeah. I kind of went on a pharma tangent, didn't I?
Yeah. No, but that's okay, because so much of mental health treatment is.
Oh, psychiatry is prescribing pills.
It's through pharma. It's through chemistry.
Quite true.
And that, I mean, I had a friend recently, she's young, who she lost her little brother a couple years ago, and she's dealt with anxiety for a couple years. And it's become, she's a young woman now. She's like 18, 19 years old. And she was recently prescribed lorazepam and told to stop going to class. Basically told to told to get all your responsibilities off your plate, take these drugs, and that's going to that's going to help. That's going to dull your pain. That's going to make life easier for you. That's like a failure in my eyes of the current system.
I wouldn't disagree one bit.
And it's one that, for all I can tell, is there's a financial incentive for somebody somewhere.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I think the failure there is the failure to recognize intrinsic human motivations and incentives. Sure, it's easier in the short term to pop a pill and not go to school, but is that really sustainable? And is that really something that makes a person feel fulfilled in the long term? I mean, we're so focused in our society right now on happiness. It's like, are you happy or not? Right? Well, that happy is an emotion. Emotions are fleeting. Sadness is also an emotion. It's also fleeting. But purpose and meaning and doing something that you feel is worthwhile, that gives you a real sense of value as a human being is something far deeper than those fleeting emotions that person is probably not going to feel by not going to school. By not going to school, she's not, going to achieve a good grade, or she's not going to graduate and then get, into a career that makes her feel like she's accomplished something, or whatever the path in her life might be. And I think that we've certainly seen a resurgence of this sort of messaging directed at young people specifically, who are predominantly the ones finding themselves diagnosed either officially or self-diagnosed with mental illness or anxiety or depression or whatever. This sort of messaging is coming back to the forefront in terms of like, hey, like, what is it that really gives you purpose and meaning? And I think that's a really difficult question for a lot of people to answer for a number of reasons. I mean, I'm asking myself that question often, right? It's like, not like I'm sitting here preaching something, that I'm not also totally working through and struggling with and trying to determine, because so many things in life are outside of our control that it's like, if you concern yourself with them too long, it gets really freaking overwhelming. And all you can do is just like put your nose down, try to focus on something that you think is important, that's going to add value to the world in some way, contribute whatever little nugget of truth you have to the conversation, to do the nice thing for the person in your life, to let the person in traffic, to just like take control of your world in whatever small way you possibly can. And then just keep doing that, I think is probably more productive towards an end that's actually going to result in something that's substantial and sustainable and meaningful for a person, instead of just taking the easy road, really, and opting for a pharmaceutical intervention and just letting all the responsibilities of life go. Where does a person go from there? Like, what's the end result there? There isn't one.
I'm pretty confident that, for as much like shit as I talk about, charlatan influencers and the downfall of social media on, the happiness of the Western world, the happiness of our generation and that of, below us and the ones to come. I think you think you really nailed it, in that we can't necessarily rally against the system. We have to figure out how to work within that system to focus on the small little sphere of influence that we have. For right this minute, it's you and I, and that's better than even if you and I are the only people that ever hear this conversation. What did we do for each other tonight? And it's not like this is that difficult. Like, sure, there's gear around here to like transmit this all, and that's not maybe like, immediately accessible to every single person out there, but like anybody can talk, can get on the thing. And I mean, no, a lot of us have the ability to get out and make the world a better place for one person, even for ourselves, just by having conversations like this, just by starting up a men's group, ladies group, starting up making it a point to have dinner with some friends once a month or once a week or whatever, like these things are not out of our reach. Mm-hmm. And while the rest of the world is collapsing around us, we can still enjoy those moments and hope that maybe, the interest that compounds from these little groups of people doing little things can ultimately have a really big impact. Yeah.
Rogan likes to say a lot that the hardest thing the worst thing that's ever happened to you is the worst thing that's ever happened to you. And that's kind of a silly way to phrase it, I think, but I think the meaning is really true, that really, how do I want to put this? 2 generations ago, courage was getting into an airplane and flying into a war zone where you were pretty sure you were probably going to get shot down and die. Meanwhile, you had a wife at home, maybe a kid or 2. Like that was courage. Now it's courage to pick your eyes up and look at another human as you walk by them on the sidewalk. To some people. And it's easy for me to think about that from where I am comfortable with that and scoff at it or say that's silly or whatever. But like, really, that's really hard for some people through perhaps no fault of their own, perhaps, genetic predisposition, perhaps just environment of their upbringing or whatever, or, perhaps due to some function or feature of the life that they've crafted for themselves, or the life that they now find themselves living. Regardless, have courage. Make it a point. If you find yourself in a place in your life where it's not what you want it to be, understand that the only person that you can 100% rely on to change that is yourself. And that all it takes to change that is to make a decision to do something that's hard or scary, and then do it again. And understand that once you do it, like, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? Right? It's like we walk around these days, and this phrasing has been thrown around a lot. It's like we walk around these days with a stress and anxiety level comparable to that which someone would feel walking around knowing that there was a tiger stalking them in the jungle, right? Like we think about, like, for someone to get up and address a room full of people, right, could elicit that exact same response as if you were literally going to be eaten by a wild animal. When like, if you were to be really rational about it, there's no risk to your life by standing up in front of a group of people and speaking. Yeah, sure, you could embarrass yourself, but, like, you're not going to die. And yeah, maybe you stumble over your words, say something stupid, whatever, people laugh at you. You will not die. So, like,
yeah, good. You're getting exposure to
yeah. So, like,
that you can beat next time.
Exactly.
You know what it felt like.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Keep it in perspective and just trust yourself that, like, no matter what happens, so long as, like, you're literally not in physical danger of actually dying, just go do it and do it again and do it again. And before you know it, you're going to look back on yourself in a year or whatever and be like, damn, I didn't think I could do that, but I can. I mean, I felt that way about starting the freaking podcast. Mm-hmm. Cause it's like, do I have what it takes to talk to people on the internet? Can I do it? Do people care about what I have to say? Am I going to sound stupid? I'll tell you what, I have sounded stupid a lot, and it's all out there on the internet for people to listen to. And there's going to be more of it.
I do it every fucking day.
I know. And if you can laugh at yourself and not take it too seriously and just be like, God, I sound like a fucking idiot, and then turn it into your intro for your podcast, then you're on your way, And I think maybe at the end of the day, that is another thing too, that we just take things a little bit too seriously. Mm-hmm. We need to just relax.
Yeah, that's something, I want to make sure that we get everything here and that we don't waste anybody's time. But I mean, let's talk about, like, some, real quick, like, I've got some, I'm sure you've got some, like, how do you manage dealing with social media and not let it become something that stresses you out, that you feel bad about, that makes you, that winds up releasing more stress hormones than joy? Like, how do you balance all of that?
I mean, the first thing that comes to mind, because I do have a problem with falling into the doom scroll trap, right? I'm susceptible to that just like anybody. The first thing I'll do when I recognize that I'm in that pattern is I'll delete the app off of my phone. Just delete it, not just remove from home screen, because you can still sneak around and you can find it somewhere. You'll get used to that pathway just as quickly as you got used to wherever it was on your phone before that. I'll just delete the app for, like, I don't know, a couple of days. And I've done it enough times now that by the time, once it's gone and it's out of my reach, it's enough of a pattern interrupt that I'm okay with just forgetting that it exists for a while. And then I'll eventually log back in and I'll have, like, 20 messages and blah, blah, blah. And I'll address those. And usually that first time back in, I'm like, oh, this is gross. I don't want to be part of this. And then I'll delete it again. Eventually, like, it'll work its way back into my routine and sort of the cycle starts over again. So really, I just try to do that on a macro scale, is just make sure to take breaks. But as far as, like, an active management of moderation, I don't really have a good tool. Do you have anything that works in that?
I mean,
sphere?
deleting so I last year, I would say if there is some sort of diagnosable disorder with regards to, social media derived stress, like I certainly put myself through it. Probably there are worse cautionary tales than mine, but like I definitely got to a point where it became so overwhelmingly stressful and like a ball of energy welling up inside, like behind my eyes, reading negative comments, engaging in senseless debates with people I've never fucking met, who are chirping at things I've said. Like I got to that point because I was told to show your personality for your brand, like somebody's got to do it, like be the face. The only way I found to delever myself from all of that was to stop using them, was to delete them. And what that did, and I realized the irony of that, given that we, release this on YouTube, that we will like release this across social media platforms, as we deem it's necessary. But the strategy that I found over the last, couple weeks of doing this, starting this versus how I used to approach social media, I used to be very concerned about the analytics and check them incessantly. And I'm pretty confident that is a direct path towards depression. Comparison is the thief of joy. Like I'm fairly certain that has led to the downfall. Did you ever hear of a guy named Dave Hollis?
That name is very familiar.
He was a Disney executive, by all accounts, crushing it. His wife wrote like a female self-help book and became this really popular self-help influencer, and he quit his job with Disney to support that, in addition to like building his own little self-help empire, which wound up, it's a really sad cautionary tale. I mean, he got as deep as you can go to where it was, documenting every single facet of his life, comparing himself to his wife. His wife's social media following far outpaced his. It led to their divorce. It led to, his, closeted substance abuse. He wound up overdosing, had everything, followed this social media path, and it led to doom and gloom. And so I think it's tales like that, like when we're just chasing those likes, when we're responding to the stress of some stranger chirping at us, when we're wondering why why people only watched up to 6 minutes of our hour-long video or whatever, and I hear people who are successful doing the same thing, talking about their likes and their views and whatnot. And like that has got to be, particularly if you're just an individual not running a brand or whatever, like it's the last thing you should fucking care about. I've just found that like taking that break, not trying to live up to anybody's expectations, least of all my own, like coming at this from a standpoint that like, I'm just trying to be here for me and you. Yeah. I'm trying, like, I want to release that video. I want to make sure I get this thing done because I promised you I would. Like that to me is the reward. Yeah. It's not the watch time. If we can, achieve that goal of making one person's life 1% better every episode, then, aces, bro. Like that's, I mean, that's even better. But if I can show up for you, week in and week out, like that's the work.
Yeah.
And that's the work that like anybody watching this can do for their homie, for themselves.
I think that's a really great point. And I mean, to put a bow on it, right? It's like, instead of chasing the cheap dopamine hits of tracking the analytics or however many notifications you have or whatever, think about the fact that doing a nice thing for someone else releases dopamine also, and doing hard things releases dopamine also. And perfect way to sum it up, Griff. I mean, our mission with this thing, apart from just getting to hang out with a great friend and have a great conversation, is to try to help one person make their life 1% better with every episode. And I think keeping our eyes and our focus, each individually, you and I, anybody listening or watching to this, on that kind of incremental approach to life, not feeling like we have to compare ourselves to anything or anybody else, but maybe ourselves yesterday, and having a lot of love and compassion for ourselves and grace for our own failures and those of other people, is really what is going to make life more meaningful, way more so than how many notifications you have.
Fucking bro. I feel really good after that.
Me too.
I mean, that gave me the warm and fuzzies.
Me too.
Hell yeah.
Well, I'm going to go to the gym now.
It works if you work it, man.
Thanks, buddy. Always fun. Thanks for watching, everybody.